Okay, Sharon Mayer speaking. I'm the Integrative Functional Nutritionist at the Institute for Health and Healing, and we're part of Sutter's Integrative program. So today we're talking about intermittent fasting, and it's a very popular subject. Always a lot of people phone in for this. So let's start. So there's a reason why most of the world's major religions call for periodic fasting. Intermittent hunger clears the mind, it awakens the senses, and it improves brain function. Plus, it lowers your blood sugar, reduces insulin levels in a short while. So there's a lot of reasons why we should be doing this. So consider our prehistoric ancestors, our hunters and gatherers. They survived feast and famine, abundance and scarcity. That's pretty much what their lives were about. There was either food or there wasn't. And many were the days and weeks they failed to catch any of the animals that they wanted and went hungry. That was things that happened with them. So what we found in all the research that's happening around this is that going without food for even a day increases your brain's natural growth factors. And this supports survival and growth of neurons. Lots of data around intermittent fasting and brain function, how it improves focus, it improves memory recall, it's about vitality, it's about thinking better, it's about clear-headed, no longer being foggy. All of these are really increasing research around this. Alzheimer's, cognitive improvement. So from a brain point of view, is really important. So what is intermittent fasting? And there's so many different programs out there. It's quite fascinating. So intermittent fasting is really about cycling in and out of periods of fasting and eating. It's a simple eating plan that makes the most of your body's own fat-burning system. So when you're doing intermittent fasting, you eat all the food your body needs, but during a shorter period of time, right? So there are many, many, many different plans out there, but the most common involves eating during a 6 to 8 hour window, and then you're fasting 14 to 16 hours. And the fascinating thing about intermittent fasting is that it really changes so many, many metabolic functions and makes those changes, and those changes are really positive. So why does this help? Well, firstly, when we digest food, it takes enormous amount of energy to digest food. Think about this. If you're eating something, the body has to discern what's good for the body and what do we add to the function of the body, and what gets excreted as waste. How do we absorb those nutrients? How does the body discern which is going in what direction? And it takes a lot of energy to do this. So when we're eating and when we're doing a lot of snacking all the time, the body is pretty much working, and all the energy is directed to this digestive system, this 22 feet of tubing. And so much energy is required for the digestion of food. That's one of the theories. The next thing is that we have what is known as the thrifty gene. So when we were having those days of fasting, when we were hunting and gathering, when there wasn't any food, gene would support us. But now we've overridden that code. And, of course, we have far too many calories, which we end up storing as fat in the body. The other part is that 70 to 80% of the immunity is in our gut. So if we're constantly eating and this digestion is constantly happening, the immune system is constantly surveying what's coming down that tube, which means is that things like autophagy, and we'll get into a little bit of detail around that. Autophagy means general house cleaning of all the other cells in the body. It's kind of like a housekeeping thing that happens. We have toxins and everything that happens in these tiny cells of ours. But we have to clean all the junk out as well. That's called autophagy. So when we are constantly eating and the immune system is concentrating around your tubing, then autophagy doesn't happen that well in all the other cells of the body. Also, we always think of healing the gut as our first line of defense, especially around inflammatory issues or any kind of disease. So when you are fasting, the gut gets some relief, and it actually heals and reduces inflammation around the gut function. So those are some of the reasons. But then let's look at some of the other things that are really good around intermittent fasting. Weight. So if you're going to be eating in a much shorter period of time, it means that your calories are reduced. We also look at something like ketosis. So if you're not eating for a period of time, intermittent fasting is a pathway to the fat-burning state of ketosis. This is where your fat is used instead of glucose as a form of energy. We also know that it reduces intermittent fasting, that is, insulin levels. And it affects how our insulin is used in two ways. First, your body becomes more sensitive to insulin, which can help prevent weight gain and reduce your risk of diabetes. And second of all, fasting decreases your insulin levels, which can cue your body to start burning that stored fat instead of glucose. So those are important functions in intermittent fasting. So let's look at that in a bit more detail. So depending on what you've eaten, so let's take that bagel, my best analogy, your blood sugar and your blood glucose will rise. Then your pancreas produces a hormone, insulin, and insulin tells your cells to fuel up on glucose. Opens up your cells, you put in the glucose back. And then your body releases a hormones like cholecystokinin, CCK, and leptin, which then signals to your brain that you are full. So when you're eating a lot of carbs and sugar and you ignore your full signal and eat frequently without burning of all that energy, your body struggles to keep up with an amount of food, and you end up with more insulin being secreted by the pancreas, and then that looks at an increase of weight gain and insulin resistance. So intermittent fasting just gives your body time to reset. When you take a break between meals, glucose levels remain stable, your insulin levels drop, and your body has a chance to clean up shop. And all of these can support and help with weight loss. So the other thing about intermittent fasting, it boosts our metabolism. So the fasting increases your levels of adrenaline and noradrenaline, hormones that help your body free up more stored energy. And it also boosts your resting metabolism. So that, again, helps you to burn more calories throughout the day. And there are lots of studies that have shown that weight loss is definitely improved with some intermittent fasting. And I can speak from my own experience with patients in my practice. Even if they are just doing intermittent fasting, I have seen great success with their results. The weight just easily comes off without there being too much of an effort put into that. The other great thing about intermittent fasting and weight is that it targets the visceral fat. This is the stubborn internal fat that's packed deeply around the abdominal organ. This is the place where everybody tells me losing the weight around the waist is so difficult. But intermittent fasting helps with that too. So besides just weight, it's also very good for cardiovascular health. It improves cholesterol, improves blood pressure, and reduces cardiovascular risk. But it helps with inflammation. It reduces the inflammation everywhere throughout the body. And it might be one of those keys too with cardiovascular disease. Again, it helps remove the cellular waste, that whole thing around autophagy, sort of every cell detoxification function. It helps with aging. As we get older, it's called inflammation, and intermittent fasting can actually help with healthy aging. And again, it helps with digestion. So it's a great function, and it's really quite easy to do. As I say, there are many different programs that you could do for intermittent fasting. The most popular is the 16-8, where you fast for 16 hours and you eat within an 8-hour window. So if your last meal was at 8 o'clock at night, your next meal would be at noon the next day. If it was at 7, it would be at 11. So it's an easy thing to do. So really what you're doing is you're skipping the breakfast. So for some people, skipping the breakfast can be very tricky, especially to begin with. You can start to get hangry, a little bit irritable, tired, and just wanting to eat all kinds of things, particularly carbohydrates. So the way you do that is you fat up the coffee or the tea, put some fats in them, and it will help you sustain you through the morning until lunchtime. You can put coconut oil in there, you could put coconut butter in there, you could put ghee in there, you could put MCT oil in there, you could put full cream in. It has to be whipped cream, none of the half and half stuff. And the reason for the fat is it has to be pure fat rather than having any carbohydrates or protein in it. The problem about half and half, it's got protein and it's got some kind of carbs in it. You want just pure fat when you're doing the coffees or the teas. And then that gives you a really good ride. You don't feel so hungry, and then achieving your 16 hours makes it so much easier. The other program is the 5-2. So the 5-2 is you eat a normal diet for 5 days of the week, and then for 2 days of the week, you drop your calories to 500 or 600. And sometimes my patients prefer that one. And sometimes it can also be a little challenging. But you can see which is the one that works for you. The great thing about intermittent fasting is that you don't have to do it every single day. Some people do. I like to do it 5 days of the week, and then on the weekend, maybe not so much. But there might be a morning when you wake up and you're really hungry, then that's the time you have your breakfast. And see if you can have just something that's a little higher in protein and fat for your breakfast. Now, I've seen some other people do intermittent fasting, and then come noon, they start stuffing down the carbohydrates. It's not such a great idea. Probably want to be just focusing on some healthy foods, maybe some salads with some protein, lots of avocado, lots of olive oil, a little higher on the fat side. I'm also, as you know, not crazy about too much snacking through the day. I think that if we can manage that, that's important. The whole idea of snacking throughout the day is now, as we know, not very healthy. And we don't need that amount of food. It means that with intermittent fasting, if you're doing the 16 and 8, you're probably getting 2 meals in a day. So you can see why that reduces your calories in the course of the day. And 2 meals would be lunch, and your next meal would be, say, dinner. If you needed something small, that would be fine, but the chances are you don't. I think we have to discern whether that is a physical hunger for the need of the snack or whether it's an emotional one. And a lot of times it is the emotional one. I'm tired, I'm bored, I'm lonely, I need a reward. All of those things are the things that sometimes snacking is linked with. So do you have any questions? Now would be the good time to unmute your phone and ask those of me. And if not, try the intermittent fasting. It's really great. I think it works extremely well.